which is at the other end of College Ave. I teach a wide variety of classes. I teach programming, design, writing for journalism, and media law and ethics. So a whole range of stuff, some more sciencey than others. And I hope that what I share with you here today is something that you can take back to your classrooms no matter what you're teaching. Okay? So first I want to sort of define the problem. Okay? So the problem that I see, I think there's a number of issues in education. The one I'm going to talk about today is fear. And the fear that I'm talking about, it's a fear that sometimes we all have, but particularly our students and our undergraduate population. They come to us from high school and they are petrified. What are they petrified of? A couple of things. Mostly being uncool, and here's a Venn diagram. There's two main reasons that they might be deemed uncool, and one is being wrong, right? And the other is being outwardly happy and enthusiastic. Particularly in your 20s, it is so not cool to be excited, and it's really not cool to be excited about school, right? We hit this point. So what we wind up with in our classrooms are two kids who want to answer all the questions and a whole room full of silent students, right? Who might have really engaging ideas worth sharing if only we could pry them out. So this session is intended to share with you some ways that I think you'll help get better engagement of all students so that they can overcome their fear. So just a couple of quick charts here. So first, I wanted to show you this. This was published in the Washington Post just last year. It shows the shape of unhappiness. It comes from an article hilariously titled, "If you haven't hit 50, you haven't hit rock bottom yet." And I'm 43, so yay. So what we can see here is two things that I want to point out. First of all, we're getting students in their 20s when they are just falling off that cliff of happiness. And many of us are teaching to them from the position of the bottom of the U. I wonder why no one wants to participate. Okay? And here's a chart that I made up. This is based on no research whatsoever, showing the inverse relationship between coolness and happiness. And finally, a chart showing the effect of charts on happiness. Basically, the more time you spend looking at charts, the less happy you will be. I'm sorry to any statisticians in the room or mathematicians, but that's the last chart I'm going to show you, okay? So that sort of sums up the problem. We've got all these kids who are afraid to answer, to take risks. What can we do to help make our classrooms a more engaging space for the majority of our students? Okay, so I've split up the solution into 4 parts, okay? And the first part is called Embrace Your Enthusiasm. Someone touched on this earlier today. There is a reason that you went into the field that you chose, and it might seem distant from you now, but what you need to do is go back and think about, there was a moment when you decided that history, math, French, biology was just the coolest thing in the world, and that you loved learning about it, and that's why you wanted to study it more, become an academic and teach it, right? But we sometimes lose sight of that along the way, and perhaps we become a bit jaded. And when I first started teaching, I had definitely lost sight of the reasons why I loved the subjects that I teach. So it's helpful to actually spend some time, so after today, go down and take a couple of minutes to just write down the reasons that you do what you do. There might be a few of you that the reason that you do what you do is just completely tertiary, and I'm sorry for you that you don't love your subject. Hopefully you can find another job. But for the rest of us, hopefully you can find that peace within yourself, because you really don't want to fake enthusiasm in the classroom, because those students know, they smell it. They smell the fear. They smell the fakiness. What you want to do is find that enthusiasm, and then instead of hiding it like you probably did mostly in your own academic career, you want to share it with your students. And that comes through not just in the words that you say, but also how you say them. Your demeanor in the classroom is modeling. It's going to model how students feel they can behave and participate in the classroom. When the teacher has good energy, the classroom is more likely to have good energy, so on and so forth. So that's the first piece of this, is to embrace your own enthusiasm. The second piece is called what I call fail-safe thinking. Now, we've heard a lot about failure lately and embracing failure. It's kind of a trend, right, in education conversations now. But I want to take it a step further and tell you specifically how I think that you could better create an ecosystem in your classroom where people feel safe to fail. And I think the biggest thing is modeling the behavior, okay? And I come back to this modeling the behavior thing a lot because I used to be a play therapist for some of the most significantly affected children. And modeling was a huge piece of what we do, and game playing was the other huge piece. So I brought those things here. So when you make a mistake and you're up there teaching, maybe there's a typo on your slide or something spelled wrong or things just are not working, oftentimes we might get frustrated inside. Take a moment, take a breath, and realize that this too shall pass, and that you are up there modeling how you want the students to feel about their own failures. I look at every failure as an opportunity to teach successful failing. So when I fail at something, I honestly now think, yes, this is such a major fail. My kids are going to learn so much from watching me be comfortable with this fail. So what I do is I don't gloss it over. I'll say, oh, that's completely wrong. Don't know what I was thinking. I correct it. I move on. I show them that we can move on from our failures because you want them to take risks in their discussions with other classmates, hopefully they go on to do research on their own. You want them to be risk takers. We need to model successful failure for them. And also, it's helpful for me when I think about my attitude when I see students fail. So by fail, I could mean not doing well on a test, but I could also mean things like coming to class late, leaving early, not getting assignments in on time. So we could sort of categorize those all as kinds of failures, right? So check your attitude. How are you interacting with students when they fail? And I found it really helpful for me to think to myself, is my attitude actually helping the situation? And what I came to realize was that when I showed frustration, or I don't think I ever got to the point of real anger, but you know that feeling just below anger, right? That when I was showing that to students, when that was what I was giving off, it actually did not make them any more inclined to get to class on time, turn their assignments in on time, or follow the general school rules. It didn't help at all. What I actually found was the reverse, that when I start off every class by explaining to them, this is a university, we're all adults in this room. I know you've got other stuff going on in your life, and particularly here at Rutgers, where so many of our kids are working full-time or nearly full-time jobs in addition to going to school here. I tell them, look, I get it. You're probably gonna have to miss some of these classes. You might need to scoot out the door early. That's okay, just know that you're responsible for learning, and I'm there for you for office hours and beyond, and I get that. And I found that when I really projected that attitude of caring about the students and being more understanding, all of a sudden everybody was coming to class on time, showing up and not leaving early. Nobody was submitting things late. And I do have a firm late policy that I tell them. There are rules in my class, but it's about how I approach them with them. So I actually found better behavior and performance when I back down, okay? So this is tied to the next idea, which is I call the dismount. I'm Canadian, that's why I chose a picture of a Mountie. For those of you not familiar with the Mounties, they're sort of like the bastion of holier-than-thou-ness. They're so perfect, and they're policing the countryside, and there he is on his horse, and it's a high horse. And what I would like to suggest to you is to dismount that horse. And try coming to your students from a place that's more of an equal level. You've all heard the be the guide on the side, blah, blah, blah. This is sort of related to that idea. The idea is that you're not there to police the classroom. That's not your role as an educator, to be the cop, right? Your role is to encourage them to explore and learn and guide them through this learning. You are still the leader of that room, but you don't need to be up on a high horse about it, right? And also to recognize that as the instructor, you're not the only person in the room with valuable knowledge. So I am a rarity in my school. I actually encourage kids to break out their phones or laptops during class, even when I am lecturing. And what I have found happens is this. First of all, I'm absolutely positive that some of them are shopping on Amazon while I'm talking, and that's fine. They know that they're gonna have to know that material at the end. I've already given them that little chat. But what I see a lot of is kids Googling what I'm talking about, and I encourage them to raise their hands mid-lecture and say, I just looked that up and that's amazing. Have you seen the video about this? And I'll stop, yeah, let's all watch it. I have seen that. Let's watch it. Or if they ask me a question that I don't know the answer to, oh, I get to model failure. It's such a great moment. And I'll say, hey, can you email me that question? I don't know the answer, but I'll look it up for you and get back to you in the next class. I really love how you're engaging with the material, right? So part of the dismount is allowing other voices, even when I'm lecturing, okay? And it does require flexibility in teaching and being okay with maybe not hitting the key point that you wanted to hit in that class. I take notes at the end of the class about the things that I didn't quite get to, so I can get to them the following time. So the final piece of this is are these social activities. So I custom build games that we play, and I've never actually got to teach in such a lovely room. We play them all over the place. We play them in the Rutgers Cinema, we play them in Scott Hall, we play them in the really old classrooms at SC&I. So this is an example of one of the ethics games that we play right before the exam. And then this last one is a board game for a course that I teach on magazine design. Does anybody know what that is? Probably not, right? Not a lot of magazine designers left, let alone in this room. It's called a flat plan, and it's something that they're going to need to know how to use. It's how you decide what's going to go beside what. It's how you don't wind up with an article, say, about the Holocaust beside a barbecue ad, because you're planning where, and that has happened, which is why I bring it up. How you plan each page. So the game board itself is the flat plan. So it's sort of a meta education. They're seeing the flat plan, they're interacting with the flat plan, and they're moving across the squares as they're answering questions in small groups. I love coming up with games. I do have a thing for board games, much to the chagrin of my 9-year-old son. So the one before it was an ethics game that we play right before the exam. And there are questions that are kind of fact-based questions, and they go through, they ask each other questions, they answer them. If no one knows the answer, it goes back in the bag, so they kind of keep getting the same questions. What this does is it allows them to work with the facts that they will need in order to be able to answer the analysis questions on the exam. And what I hear from a lot of students is playing that game made me realize I had no clue what was going on in the course, right? I had to study more, right? So it's like a last check. So I find my students who are really struggling up until that point and haven't come to me until that point suddenly get a realization, oh man, do I need to ever come to you before the exam? And they love playing them. It's a moment for social interaction. Okay, so that is enough of me lecturing for now. Let's play, okay? So the first game that we're gonna play is called Animal Crackers, okay? And this is actually going to cover the material that you gave in this morning's keynote. So I think you all have whiteboards in front of you and a marker. Does anybody need a whiteboard and a marker? Okay, so the setup for this game, I want you to pay attention to the setup because it's as important as the game itself. It's really just a question and answer, but the setup is important. So the first part is you're going to form a team. Let's just stay in our groups. We're already there. And as a group, I want you to pick a jungle animal. So please turn to your partners now and pick as a group a jungle animal. You can do this. I have faith in you. Just making sure everyone has markers. Raise your hands if you thought of your jungle animal. Let's see lots of hands high in the sky. I want to see energy, enthusiasm, excitement. Come on, guys. We are modeling what we want to see in our students. You've got a name? Okay. Everybody's got a jungle animal? Great. Great, great. Okay, so let me hear. We'll start over here. What's your jungle animal?
We have elephants.
Elephants, yes.
Tiger.
The tigers. And Stacy is going to be our lovely record keeper. So we've got the elephants, the tigers, yes. The lions, okay, the lions. Lots of big cats, that's right.
Panda.
The panda. Oh, you're going to love that one in a moment. That's a great choice. Cheetah? The cheetahs. You're going to get exercise. Yes. The giraffes, okay. That's another great one. You're going to love your choice. Nobody trusts me when I say that. And yes, finally, the jaguars, the mighty, mighty jaguars. Okay, so we've all got our jungle animals. Now we're going to move on to the very important next step. You're going to need to remind me, what noises your animal make? You're going to decide on the noise that your team is going to make. Oh, I'm liking it, pandas. I can hear it already. Okay, hopefully you've all got your noises decided down. Very important step. These are the all-important noises that you are going to use to chime in with your answers. So what's going to happen is I'm going to put a question on the board. Your scribe, so pick a scribe, is going to write down the answer on your whiteboard, okay? And when you've got that written down, you're going to chime in with your sound so I know who's first, okay? But to do this properly, really, folks, we need to practice these noises, okay, so that we're prepared. So we'll start at this side now, since we started with the names over here. So on the count of 3, you guys are the jaguars, right? Jaguars. Okay, on the count of 3, I want to hear it from you. 1, 2, 3. That was awesome. I very much enjoyed that. I am having fun. None of you are having fun. It's okay. I am having enough fun for everyone. Okay, giraffes. I told you were going to love your choice. I always get one student group picking giraffes. By the way, sometimes I do this with vehicles. Also a funny idea. Okay, so giraffes, I'm going to have you practice your noise on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. That's perfect. The first time I had students pick giraffes, none of us knew the sound that a giraffe made. We had to Google it. That's pretty close. Just so you know, now you've learned something new. Okay, next up we have the cheetahs. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, cheetahs. Oh, very creative. Easy to distinguish from the other large cats. Okay, and I heard you guys practicing. It's awesome. Let's all give it up for the pandas. 1, 2, 3. That's about it. Okay, and beside the pandas we have the lions. 1, 2, 3. You sound like slightly disgruntled, like you've eaten a bad hyena and maybe it's not sitting right, but that's okay. You are distinguishable. So the disgruntled lions, the mildly disgruntled lions, and now the tigers. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're gonna have some competition here, wildcats. And finally, the elephants and your nice, discernible, easy to come up with noise. Who can make it for me? 1, 2, 3. I like the accompanying movement. I saw some hesitation on the part of some team members. I'm just saying, if you want the point, you got to give me all 3 E's: energy, enthusiasm, and excitement. Okay? Okay. So we've all got our noises. We're going to move on to question number 1. Are we ready? Okay. What are the 5 E's that we learned this morning? Now, one table does have kind of an unfair advantage here. Okay. Okay, can I get quiet, please? Thank you. Let's hear it for the pandas. What are your E's? Excitement, explain, elaborate, engage, evaluate. That's definitely not excitement. That was one of my E's, I guess. That's okay, though, because we have someone else ready to try. Oh, look at theirs. It's even written neatly. So I would like to give them half of a bonus point for writing nicely. And then they wrote down engage, explore, evaluate, explain, and elaborate. Did we nail them? I believe we did. Yes, I had to write that down. No, I did not say that ordered matters, so that's okay. Okay, so the Jaguars now have 1.5 points. Let's hear it for the Jaguars. Very nicely done. Okay, we are very, very nice. Oh, there are prizes. Okay, we're going to move on to question number 2. A weekly reflective journal entry is an example of which E? Consult in your groups. Okay, I heard them first, but then I saw you. I don't know if I heard anything. Are you guys the cheater? The cheater? Oh, the giraffes. That's true. I did like that you guys stood up, and I'm going to give them a 0.25 for the standing up. And then we'll come over to you for the answer, and it is evaluation. That's right. It would be an evaluation type of activity. So definitely they are the Tigers. So the Tigers get a full point. Very nicely done, Tigers. Though I did really appreciate your standing up. I have to say, Tigers, when your noise started out, it sounded a bit like a truck starting. I'm not sure what zoos you're visiting, but you can let me know later on. Okay, and now we're moving on to question number 3. Here we go. If you can't hit all 5 E's, what should always come before an explanation? Now, I read this in your literature. Oh, the pandas are in it with, I believe that says engage. Are we writing in English? I know you know many, many languages. Just showing off, also writing in 3 others. Okay, so the pandas get a point. Oh, okay. So it looks like the Jaguars have won it. So before I debrief you on this game, I do need to give you your prizes, which you get to pick out of your exciting and happy prize bag. You can pass it around and pick one while I chat. So the reason that I do these kinds of games, I usually open a class with this kind of game to review, say, a reading or a video lecture that I've given them to do, over the weekend, that kind of thing. And it just provides that wake up for the students. It takes maybe 10, 15 minutes, but it really gets them engaged. And I have had many students tell me that they are more likely to do the reading because they think there's a chance for a game. I always keep saying, because they want the prize. And can you tell us a bit about some of your prizes? Yeah. What did you get, best one? Oh yes, Bacon Band-Aids. We have encouragements with Mr. Rogers on the front. We have some poop-shaped erasers and other sort of trinkety things. And inside that balloon is something. It is a USB drive, that's right. So I collect a random assortment of prizes because I like to keep these kinds of activities low stakes or no stakes. I don't know how you view your prizes. It might depend on whether you got the poop erasers or the USB key. But what I mean by that is low stakes would be 1% of your grade. So in other kinds of social activities that I do, where the students actually have to write something down. So for example, in media law class, I make up wacky scenarios, and then I ask them to work as a legal team and to pretend they're from the firm of Kremen, and they're working for me, and they have to figure out which privacy law, for example, would apply here. And then they have to write up why and how they would proceed. So for that kind of thing, and they would do that all in class in small groups, for that kind of thing I might give them 1%, right? So they're not afraid to take risks because they're not risking their whole grade. I think, particularly with our demographic at Rutgers, we need to remember that some of our students really have never had a lot of opportunities that are no stakes, low stakes. Their grade means more to them than it did to some of us, because this is like, they view it as their one shot, whether or not it is, and that puts just so much stress, which is why I try to keep these activities fun and light. Now, I also have in my classrooms traditional forms of evaluation. We have exams, quizzes, all those things in addition to these games. So it's not just fun. I'm gonna play, I think we have time for one more. Yeah, do we have time? Yes. How long does this go? 3:20? Something like that? Yeah, we totally have time. Okay, great, we're gonna play another game. This game is called Pop. This is the kind of game I would do instead of an exit slip. Does anybody know what an exit slip is? They're real trendy in education now. Yeah.
You can write down either comment or something you learned or a question?
Yeah, that's kind of what they are. What were you going to add, Sal?
Oh, yeah, so usually what I do is like, I stop the class 3 minutes before it ends, and I ask them to, write something like, what's the most important thing, what's something you remember from today's class? And then they have to give it to me before they can leave the classroom.
Right, so this is a different sort of a take on exit slips. What I'm looking for here is to find out actually what they didn't learn. Because that's what I'm going to want to go back and reteach, either via video in between classes or at the start of the next class, or what I might want to go over in the next class's game, right? So we're going to do this now. Step 1 is to take, there's little notepads in the center. There should be a little notepad in the center of your podium. If there isn't, I will give you one. And each person needs a piece of paper from that pad, okay? So take your little piece of paper, and this is when you need your pen. And you're going to write down a question that remains with you about active learning. So it could be something from my session today, but it does not have to be. It could be any kind of active learning question. I'm just walking you through an example of what I would do in class. So in a regular class day, I would say, write down a question, something you still don't understand from what we learned this week, okay? So you're gonna write that down on your piece of paper. The next step, you're gonna roll up your piece of paper. And if you roll it towards the sticky end, it should hold itself together. So you're rolling it up in a little tube. It doesn't need to be perfect. You could fold it if you're busy on a roller. And then you're going to stick it inside your balloon. So everybody take a balloon. And I am going to tell you a version of this game that requires no prep, no advanced balloon purchasing. So put it inside your balloon, and then blow up the balloon and tie it up. If you need a hand with blowing up the balloon, you can ask a friend at your table, make a new friend with great lungs, or I can come around and help you. Can I offer anyone a hand? Do you want me to close? Oh! Now you're getting ahead of us. And I know you're an advanced student here. Does anybody need another balloon? Okay, so do you need help over there? Wait, what table was that? The Lions. Do you need some assistance? Okay. So while you're blowing up your balloons, I'll just share with you that one of the reasons that I have the students pick these goofy team names, you didn't really get around to explaining that, and doing that whole activity of making the sounds, is because when we are all humiliated together, we're all over that fear of being humiliated, right? And the students then know when they show up in my classroom, oh, this is the group of people who we've already been crazy together. And that's what we do. This is what I do on Monday mornings. I act crazy with Professor K, right? And they really do get over it. When Richard came to see my class, one of the things that he said to me was, you better be careful because they would do anything for you. Right? So the first class, usually there's this, like a teeny bit of resistance, but then by the second class, they are all in, and they are committed to their teams, and they become these sort of mini classroom families for the students too, right? And particularly when we're dealing with our undergraduate population, they don't know each other, in my school anyway. Students do not know each other. They might not have other classes with the same students. Having that group makes them, they tell me, more likely to come to class. They know their other pandas are counting on them. I used to have them switch teams periodically, but I found that the bond was stronger when they kept the teams the whole semester. And they just did presentations for me, actually, and they all had used their animals, even though they were totally unrelated to the presentation material. They all had incorporated little pictures of their animals throughout their slideshows because they were just invested in their teams. And I thought, that's great, and they're having fun and they're learning at the same time. Okay, so now let's get back to our game pop. Our third step. That's not a great sound system in this room. That's all. professional help. We have great counselors at Rutgers who can help you. So what we're going to do now is you're going to pop your balloons. And I want you, when you're popping them, to try and hold on to that piece of paper with the question, okay? So try and see that it doesn't go. So everybody find a balloon, okay? And I'll come back to the client. Hopefully you all wound up with a question that wasn't yours, right? So I want you to get together as a group, and you're going to go around and read your questions to each other and decide on one question that you feel you can answer as a team, assuming you had help. So you can use your laptops or your phones, right? So pick a question that you feel you could answer. I'm not actually going to have time to have you answer them today, but pick the question. Just go around and share your questions to get a feel about what that would be like, okay? So go around and share your questions. So I'm just gonna bring you all together again and tell you what I would normally do. If I can just get your attention for 1 sec. So what I would normally do at the end of this activity in a real classroom is that I would have the students break out laptops if they hadn't already, and then they would answer one of the questions and submit it to a discussion forum. I use Canvas, but all of our classroom tools now have discussion forums. And so they post the question and the answer, and then I encourage the students to go through and read all the questions and the answers, and I contribute by, if for example there's an answer that's way off, I'll help guide them back to center. But what this kind of work does is it empowers the students to see that they know more than they think. They can help each other. They have answers worth sharing, and they can help each other problem solve. Right? So because what you're doing is you're answering somebody else's classroom, somebody else's question in your same classroom, right? So that you can all help each other. They feel, it's a part of the dismount too, right? It's a part of making them feel like they can be an active part of the answer and not just a passive student sitting that I'm telling what to do, right? So that's what I would normally do. We don't have time for all of that now, and I don't have a discussion forum set up. But I would like to go over, and then, I'll say one more quick thing. What I would do though is, because we're only gonna get a smattering of the range of questions done in a discussion forum that way, I collect all the pieces of paper. So I ask everyone to give me their piece of paper, and that's how I get a sense of, was there a trend or a theme in the kinds of things the students weren't understanding? Because that's where I need to work a little bit harder to help explain next time, right? It gives me a great sense of that. Someone suggested, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Sue?
Yeah.
Sue suggested that the pop activity could also be really well integrated into an icebreaker, right? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, I was saying you could have them put their name and like a fun fact about themselves on the paper, roll it up, put it in the balloon, and you need to get somebody else's balloon, and then introduce the other person as an icebreaker.
Yeah, so it could work, this kind of balloon activity could work in a variety of ways. Now, let's say you're teaching a class and there's still 10 minutes to go, and you'd like to fill that time with something meaningful, but you didn't bring balloons, okay? Because I'm the only person that walks around with a bag of balloons routinely. You can do this in something that's a little more traditional. It's called a snowball fight. So all you need is paper. So you have them take a scrap of a piece of paper, they write their question down on it, they ball it up, and then they have a snowball fight with the pieces of paper, so they wind up with somebody else's paper. Same thing, they throw the balls around. That is a no prep, fun classroom activity. They love it, even without the balloons, right? It's super fun, and honestly, all you need is some paper. So if you've got one kid there with a traditional notebook, you're set, right? Hopefully you can count on that. And then there was one more thing I wanted to say before we took some of the questions, which was, I don't get to work, I mentioned that I don't get to work in these fancy classrooms. I never have. And so I don't have whiteboards in my rooms. So what I do is I take a white piece of paper. This is actually a game board from my ethics game, but any white piece of paper laminated is, my friend, a very portable whiteboard. So I've always got 10 in my bag at any one time, and the markers to go with them, so that even if I'm teaching in some really ancient classroom that is one blackboard at the front, I still can engage students in fun ways on the fly. My training as a play therapist involved me coming up with games very much on the fly, so just in that moment. And so I do that a lot. The key to running a successful game is believing in your game. Okay? It's knowing that your game is awesome. If you don't think it's awesome, then don't bother playing it. But when you start, don't second guess yourself. Believe, this is a great game. This game is gonna rock. It is so much more likely to be successful when you believe in it. It's very true. Okay, so now let's see if we can hit a couple of questions and maybe get some answers from our colleagues. Who has a question from their balloon that they would like answered? Anybody? Nobody has any questions. You had a question? Okay, great.
So ours was, how do you make games in the active learning classroom comfortable for shy students?
So by the end of the class, I don't have any, by the end of the semester, I don't have any shy students. This is what I find. We also do a couple of presentations, usually in most of my courses, where they have to get up and present. My school has a high percentage of students from other cultures where they're less comfortable presenting, and I think, great, here's an opportunity for them to get comfortable with it. So I'm not of the opinion that we should back down from trying to encourage shy students to come forward. I'm of the opinion that we should be kind and patient with them, but provide them with those opportunities. And I think it's easier to not be shy when the whole point isn't just raising your hand and giving an answer. You know, that feels unsafe, you know? But when there's all this fun surrounding the activity, it becomes much safer to answer questions. And I have students who've come to me and said, I've never participated in a class before, but in your class I felt like I could. And I think it's because of the ecosystem that I try really hard to build in the classroom. Anybody else got a question? Yes?
We have a question of what is the best way to implement active learning in a school environment that focuses on traditional exams?
Ooh, that focuses on, so I do have exams in my courses. And I still incorporate games. But does anybody have a good answer? Does anybody do that? Does anybody implement active learning in a school that is very exam focused? Did you guys come up with any answers at your table?
I mean, I teach a medical program, and it's multiple choice all day, all the time, and national boards that hinge on your multiple choice ability, and we do active learning. They practice the multiple choice test taking, but how they gain the knowledge is different than the practicing of the test.
And that I would say it's the same for me. So oh yes, please.
Yeah, I
Ryan.
think I have actually used this when I was in LA, because most of the exams for astronomy were multiple choice. But I think an exercise that I gave to my students was for them to come up with their own questions that could be on an exam.
Oh, that's a great one. I love that one. Does everybody here? He said for the students to come up with questions that they think might be on the exam, right? So I incorporate active learning before the exam because I feel like it preps them better for the exam. I don't actually see an inherent conflict between those two things. I would not use balloons during an exam period. And in that sense, there's a conflict, although the last exam that ran right outside of the classroom, I swear they were throwing a dance party for old ladies like me. There was just like loud 80s music coming out of a fraternity, and I was holding back the dancing. I knew they were trying to focus. But in general, I think we can do both. It's about picking your moments. Not every class of every course has to be game. It's about smattering it through. Sort of like dog training, right? Doesn't the dog learn faster if you don't give them the reward every time for some reason? Anyway, yes, intermittent reward. Thank you. That's the phrase I was looking for. Any other questions? Oh, yes.
This wasn't one that came to our table, but is there a way to incorporate this concept of having this game and this active learning component in an online course?
That's a great question. So far I've only taught in-class and hybrids. So I tend to load up the in-class session of the hybrid with games. And I haven't had that challenge yet. Has anybody else found a way to engage in active learning online? I'd love to know. That's such a great question. Yes?
I took a course on assessment, actually, higher education assessment, and we did a lot of, like creating quizzes and then having other students take the quizzes.
Oh,
and
nice.
then going back and evaluating our quiz and deciding where we maybe went wrong with phrasing or something like that, language matters. Those kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, it is harder because you're not in person, but there are ways to do it sort of online, especially with these new technologies. Yeah.
You were going to add something?
I was going to say that in terms of, it's not a game, but one thing I saw that they tried in philosophy this past semester in an attempting to do an active online is students log in and they see the professor for a few minutes and then they're given their assessment, like here's a 10-question quiz. Then they have to go into their groups and discuss, it's an ethics class. So there's a lot of ethical discussion and talk back and forth and was your answer correct and incorrect? And then at the end of this class, you get to take the quiz. You got 2 minutes though instead of 10. You got to take the quiz again, and you get to change your answer based on your discussion. So did somebody convince you that, I thought this was the right answer, but maybe this one? And there will be penalties if you had the right answer, but flip-flop because somebody else convinced you otherwise to the wrong answer. And if you had the wrong answer and gone to the right answer, you could gain some points back, but obviously not the full point because you initially got it wrong. So the whole point is, do it, reflect, discuss, and reevaluate and try again.
Right, and certainly in the online courses that I've taken as a student, I've seen that discussion helps get toward active learning. It's not active learning in and of itself, but by posting your assignment and then having other students reflect on your assignment, it's a small piece. But I haven't quite mastered done an online game yet. So that's a good question. I'll have to think on that. So I know that we have to wrap up. So I just wanted to say that I absolutely love making games, and I would love to help you make games. So please, my email address is just r.k@rutgers.edu. Could not be easier to remember. I don't think you need my card, but I will give it to you if you want one. Please write to me if you want. I can laminate you a nice fresh set of whiteboards. I can help you make games that tie your some of your challenges, because they're going to be unique to your classroom, to your content goals, and I think that's key. That's what I want to get across today, is really you can move content along, you can teach content and also achieve some of these socialization, overcoming fear-based goals. Thank you very much.